Hello and welcome once again. This is Jennifer McGuire and I hope you're having a good week. Today I am here to share with you some techniques for using shimmer powders to create fun backgrounds. Shimmer powders are easy to use, a little goes a long way, and there are many fun looks that you can get with them. Now these looks range from clean and classy to messy and artsy, so there's a little bit of something for everyone. I will also be sharing some tips for you on creating designs using these ink types of backgrounds. So I'm hoping there's something for everyone. This is one of those videos where I have a lot of card examples for you. I actually use new products from several of my favorite companies, including Simon Says Stamp, Memory Box, Poppy Stamps, and Lawn Fawn. I love to mix up the companies. So I'm going to start by creating the backgrounds and showing you some techniques, and then we'll get into finishing off the cards with some tips along the way. For my background techniques, I'll be using Tonic Nuvo Shimmer Powders. I've had these for quite some time and use them off screen a lot, but I'm just getting around to using them in a video. Now I've only purchased some of the colors. There are more colors than I'm showing here. Nuvo Shimmer Powders are a unique combination of shimmering mica powder and a vibrant dry pigment. So when you lightly tap this powder over paper and then add water, the colors just explode. You get really cool effects. And I'll show you some of that today. You can also mix these powders with water to create a sparkling metallic water-based paint. Lots of things you can do with this, as I mentioned. I'm just going to show you the tip of the iceberg today. So here I'm just showing you some of the colors that I have, and I wrote the colors on the sheet here. I always use these with watercolor paper, as I like to use a lot of water with them, and this paper will hold up. And this is Tim Holtz watercolor paper. So I've sprayed some water onto my paper, just a little bit, and then I'm just tapping some of the powder on. You can right away see how the color becomes very vibrant. And you can see the metallic shine that it has. Some of the colors of this pigment powder have multicolors in it. So when you put it down, you'll see a little bit of blue, a little bit of purple. It creates really cool effects. So you don't need a lot of colors to get neat looks from this, and I'll be showing examples of that too. You can also mix a little bit of two colors to create new colors, so you really don't need too many to create wonderful backgrounds. So there you can see a close-up look at the shine that you get with these colors. Okay, let's go ahead and start creating. I think the best way to understand these powders is to see them in action. Here I have a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper that I've taped down to a board so that it doesn't warp when we add the water. In this case, I'm first putting down a few light taps of two colors onto dry watercolor paper. You can see how little I'm putting down. I then am going to spray it generously with a water mist bottle and watch how it reacts. These two particular colors create lots of colors. You can see some pink, some purple, some blue. Really cool effects just with those single colors. So the more water you add, the more blending you'll get. The less water you add, the kind of cool, veiny look that you get. So I just decided to let that sit and dry and check out this fun background, and it has lots of shimmer to it that catches the light nicely. Now I think this is super cool looking, but I often have times using artsy backgrounds like this on a card, so I'll show you later how to give it a clean look. Here's an example where I sprayed my watercolor paper heavily with water first, and then I tapped in a few colors of the pigment powders. You'll see right away the color reacts. I then spray it with a little bit more water and use a brush to kind of move them around because in this particular case, I wanted a soft blended background. When that dries, we get this nice blended shimmery background that's very subtle, but it's very different than the last example we did. That's one of the fun things about these shimmer powders is the very different looks that you can get. Okay, here's another example. I've taped down some more watercolor paper, spraying it generously with water, and then tapping on a few colors. This time I decided to do a little rainbow of color. I went pretty heavy on the amount of powder I put from the green and the blue, and you'll see that kind of overtakes everything. Remember, a little goes a long way. You only need 2 or 3 taps of the bottle. Now notice there are some heavy concentrated areas. See those 3 dots in the blue? You could leave this and it'll work itself out and dry beautifully, Or I like to take a brush and kind of break up those heavy areas just so I get a more blended look. Once this dries, check out that cool background with tons of shimmer to it. Now I will end up die cutting a little portion of this out and just getting that key area around the yellow, but I think it's such a neat effect. Here's a background example where I first applied the powder pretty generously. That's quite a bit of powder for an example. But then I sprayed it with water, and check out the bold color I'm getting. Lots of movement with the color. I decided to blend a little bit in the middle and then just spray a little more water, dab off some of the heavy spots with a dry paper towel. And when it dries, you get these really cool effects. The key to these backgrounds is to let them dry. The color will pull back a little bit as it dries, but the results will be worth it. Now in this example, I put down a little green powder, a little blue powder, added lots of water, set it aside, and we get this really cool artsy looking background. That's a perfect backdrop for a die cut. Now that we've done some basic backgrounds, let's step it up a bit and use these shimmer powders in the best way they can be used, and that is with an embossed resist. The results are really cool. So in this case, I'm once again going to be using watercolor paper, but this time we're going to heat emboss a pattern on it before we add our powders. This time I'm using the new Simon Says Stamp Heart to Heart background stamp. This is a great example for this technique. I'm putting it into my MISTI stamping tool just to help with the process, and I have a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper that I'm putting some temporary adhesive on the back of. Now I'm going to lay the front of the watercolor paper up against the stamp. I'm going to close my MISTI on it upside down, flip it over, and now my paper will be perfectly positioned so that the stamp covers the whole thing. I'm applying my anti-static powder tool over the surface because we're going to heat emboss. I'm inking up the background stamp with Versamark ink, which is just a clear sticky ink. I will stamp that onto the watercolor paper, and then we'll add some white embossing powder and heat emboss that. Now I am stamping onto the smooth side of the watercolor paper. Oftentimes watercolor paper has a smooth and a textured side. I find it's much easier to work on the smooth side. Once we've finished heat embossing that, I'm taping it down onto my travel glass media mat from Tim Holtz. This is a great work surface to pick up and move around your craft room and to take on the go. For this particular example, I'm spraying it pretty generously with water first. Then I'm tapping on a few different colors of the shimmer powder. You'll see that the powder reacts right away with the water, but what I like to do is go back and spray it again with more water, and you'll see the color start to move. Now you have two options. You can either put the powder down first, then add water, or put the water down first and add powder. I kind of switch between the two options, but I like the results that I get best when I put the powder down first. You'll see me do both throughout this video. So now I'm just using a brush to kind of move the color around. I will say, if you have faith and trust in the process and don't mess with it like I'm doing here, you'll get better results. But if you like to play around with it a bit and move the color with a brush, you're welcome to do that. You can also heat set this to dry, but that sometimes messes with the embossing that we've done. So it's best just to set it aside, let it do the work for you, and come back and you'll have a result like this. It's such a beautiful shimmer with wonderful colors in it, and you use very little of the product, and it took no time at all. All right, let's do another background example. This time I'm doing the powders first, which I think is probably the way I prefer to do it. I have heat embossed already on this watercolor paper, and I've taped it down. Now I'm spraying water generously over it. The embossing that I did was with the Simon Says Stamp Flora background stamp, which is an older stamp that I reach for often. I just put the powder down, sprayed it with water, and I walked away. I didn't mess with it with a brush or anything, and look at the wonderful results. I like that the white heat embossing kind of forms walls that create pools of colors, so it gives you this fun stained glass look. Here's another background I created in the same way. I white heat embossed the Simon Says Stamp Flora background stamp onto watercolor paper, tapped on a few pigment powders, sprayed it with water, and I walked away while it dried. And when I came back, I had this beautiful background that looks almost stained glass. For this next example, I am adding water first and then tapping the pigment powders into the water. This piece of watercolor paper has been white heat embossed with that Flora background stamp. Now, after I've added some powders, and I added quite a bit, I'm going to use the brush to move them around, and you'll see I have a lot of color here. I wanted my background to be a little bit softer, so I'm coming in with a dry, reused baby wipe, tapping away some of the color just to remove some of those heavy concentrations. Then I'll let it dry, and here's the results. I could leave those extra puddles and it would give a more vibrant background, but I wanted something a little more subtle so that the focus would be on our sentiment that we'll add in the center. Remember, a little goes a long way with these powders. You don't need too much. If you put too much down, your background will be very, very dark, which is okay. But it's best to start with less and you can always add more. So for this example, I have white heat embossed background stamp, and now I'm applying pigment powder over it. Then I'm going to spray this with water and watch the cool effects that you get. Now in this case, I wanted a really soft background, so I didn't put too much powder down. I'm going to move some color around with my brush, and it's looking like a hot mess now. That's okay. I'll dab away some of the extra color, and then I'm going to walk away. I'm going to leave it. It'll still look like a hot mess, but when you come back and it's dry, you have this beautiful, soft looking background. Remember, if it looks like a hot mess at any point, walk away, let it do its thing, let it dry on its own, and when you come back, it'll always look better. Let's do a few examples with a text background stamp. This is the new Simon Says Stamp UR background stamp, which is a new favorite of mine. It has lots of encouraging sentiments along the background. It's great for a subtle background or for a really cool technique like we're doing here. So I've white heat embossed that background stamp on watercolor paper. I applied some pigment powders, and then I'm going to spray it generously with water and leave it and walk away. And when I come back, I get this really cool looking background with no effort at all. Here's another one I did in the exact same way with different colors. Beautiful backdrop for any card that you may create. So I encourage you to look through your background stamps. I bet many of them would work great for an embossed resist with these Nuvo Shimmer Powders. Now another thing you can do with these shimmer powders is to add them to water and then use them as a metallic watercolor. So on my glass work surface here, I sprayed 3 puddles of water, and I'm adding 3 colors of the shimmer powders to them. And I'm just going to paint them into my white heat embossed background here on watercolor paper. So basically it works like any kind of watercolor, but it has a beautiful shimmer to it. And again, a little of that powder goes a long way. All you have to do is hold the bottle upside down, tap it gently from the bottle, and just the right amount will come out. You can even mix colors. So I mixed some blue and purple there to create kind of an indigo color. So you don't need many colors to get any colors that you would want in a color palette. So here's the final result. It has lots of shimmer to it. Didn't take that long at all, and I was able to mix colors to create new ones. Now I'm sure someone will ask if you need to do anything to protect these backgrounds. If you want to, you can spray a fixative on them, and I'll link to the fixative that I use below. However, I didn't feel like much of the shimmer or color was coming off, so I just left mine as is. It's totally up to you if you want to use a fixative. Okay, now that we've done some backgrounds, let's create some cards, and I have some fun things to show you along the way. Let's start with this crazy looking background that we created. I wanted to make a simple card that allowed that color to shine. I'm using the new Simon Says Stamp You Are Loved die set. This is an excellent die set for creating a focal point on a card that allows some of the background to show. I also feel that the sentiment works for many different occasions. I thought it would be great to die cut it using a specialty cardstock, so I'm using this holographic cardstock from Tonic, which I am crazy about right now. It die cuts beautifully, and it really catches the light and makes for a special card. I die cut it once from that cardstock, and then twice from white cardstock. And I'm going to glue those together so that it has nice dimension to it, and I'll put the holographic die cut on the top. I then glued that onto a white die cut that I created with the shadow die that's included with the die set. So this will allow the words to stand out nicely against our background. I trimmed our shimmer background down and added it to a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch pale purple note card that I created. I added our die cuts, including the hearts in the center of the O's, and then I added a few gemstones. Very simple, but there's lots of shine to that die cut and lots of shimmer in the background. I like cards like this that are fun to make because using those fun products in the background is super fun, but also quick to do. Here's another one I did with my soft colored embossed resist background that I created earlier. I created another of the layered die cuts with the holographic paper on top, added that right into the center of our background, and glued a few gemstones into the pattern of the background too. And I added that onto a white 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. Here's a little tip. That die cut there works on top of any inked background that you create. So you could do some fun experimenting with different products on a background, add that die cut in the center, put it on a note card, and you're good to go. Here's another. This time I used black cardstock for the You Are Loved and added some gemstones. Super quick and easy. Okay, this next example, I decided to create a little window in the center of our background. For this, I'm using the new Simon Says stamp, Love and Valentines Word Mix 2 die set and stamp set. What's cool is there's 2 large stamps in this stamp set. And when you stamp them, they each can be cut out using that one die. So you can quickly make lots of sentiments in one quick stamp and die cut. So I have my MISTI stamping tool with some white cardstock. I'm using my anti-static powder tool, and I'm taking one of the large stamps, which is a cluster of sentiments. Going to stamp that with Versamark ink onto the white cardstock. Then I'm adding a really cool embossing powder from Brutus Monroe called Night Shift Powder. This is the blue color, and it has lots of shimmer in it, and it gives you different colors depending on how you tilt it in the light. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set this, and once I've heat set it, I can take the die and line it up with all of these sentiments and run it through my die cut machine, and it'll cut them all at once. I'm only going to use the Love You sentiment on this particular card, but I'll have all those leftover sentiments to use on future cards. Next, I'm taking one of the circle dies from the Circle Thin Frame die set from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm cutting it from the center of our inked background. This will cut a nice circle and also a thin frame, which I can save for another project. I'm just going to use the large negative space on this card. I can also save the circle for another card. Next, I created a navy note card that's 4 1/4 by 5.5, and I'm gluing some white cardstock at the center of it. I then used white craft foam to die cut a circle that I'm gluing to the back of our Love You sentiment, just so there's some dimension. I also cut a piece of white craft foam to be slightly smaller than our inked background piece, and I die cut a circle from the center of it. I'll glue this on the back of our inked piece, and it'll give it dimension also. Then I can glue that right onto our card. If you don't have craft foam, you could definitely use foam tape for this. I just like craft foam because it holds up nicely in the mail. I'm using Gina K Connect liquid adhesive to glue this all in place, and there I'm putting the sentiment right in the opening. I did go back with that thin frame circle die and die cut 3 times from white cardstock and glued those together to make that little frame around the inside of that window, just for a little added dimension. I added a few little gemstones to the background, and there we have a simple card, and you can see how that embossing powder catches the light, as does the shimmer in our background. The next card features the background that we created by painting with the shimmer powders. I thought it'd be fun to stamp on top of this too. So I have that UR background stamp that I showed you earlier. I'm going to put some temporary adhesive on the back of our inked piece. I'll lay it down perfectly lined up with our background stamp, and I'm going to close my MISTI on this upside down. Once I close it and then flip it back over, our inked piece will be temporarily taped inside of the MISTI perfectly lined up so we can stamp on it. I'm going to stamp this background 2 or 3 times with Hero Art's soft granite ink. This is a light gray ink, and I wanted it to show up a little more, so I stamped it 3 times. I really like this look of adding that subtle text over our heat emboss and painted background. So much look of texture to it. Now I'm using a square die, and I'm just placing it towards the top center of our background, running it through our die cut machine to create a little window. I then glued that on the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. And I have a Love You sentiment that I created with that word mix stamp set that I just showed you, the one that creates lots of sentiments at once. I silver heat embossed that love you sentiment, put it right in the center, and we have a simple card. Now you may notice on here and other envelopes that I've created that I stamped a sentiment. Those are from this new Simon Says Stamp CZ Design Good Mail Day stamp set. I'm a big fan of stamp sets like this that allow you to decorate your envelopes, and this set has a lot of clever sayings. So when I finish my card, I grab a matching envelope, and then I stamp on them, and then I pair them up together in my drawer so that I always have something that goes nicely with the cards I've made. Okay, my next example used the inked background that we created with the white heat embossed text background. To finish this card off, I used the Simon Says Stamp CZ Designs Ampersand stamp set. Now this you can use to make many different sentiments, but I just decided to use the word prayers and die cut it out, and then stamp sending you right above it, and all that's included in the set. I'm also using the Poppy Stamps Graceful Heart Frame die. I really like Poppy stamps, and they're beautiful designs like this one. It allows you to make really beautiful cards in no time. I die cut that background twice from white cardstock and glued it together for dimension. Then I glued it right on top of our inked background. I put that onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card, glued a white heart in the opening of the heart on our frame. Then I added the Sending You Prayers sentiment from the Ampersand Words stamp set that I just showed you. So here's the final card. I didn't even add any embellishments to it. I felt like the interest in our background and then that fun layered frame was all I needed to make this card special. This is one that you could do with any background that you create, and the shimmer from those powders really catches the light nicely. Okay, here's another quick card that I made using a few products that I was really excited about. This is the new Memory Box Heart Frame die. Now I'm going to line up that heart over that rainbow background that we created. And I'm going to run that through my die cut machine so I can have this fun rainbow heart. I used the same die to die cut twice from white cardstock, and I glued them together for dimension. Then I glued that onto Lawn Fawn Pearlescent Vellum. Now watch when I pick this up. You'll see that it catches the light and shows lots of different colors. And I thought it'd be a fun little backdrop for this heart frame. So now I'm going to take that and glue that onto a white note card. I'll end up trimming this down to be 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. I added a handmade hello sentiment from the Simon Says Stamp Good Mail Day stamp set that I used for the envelopes also. So you can see lots of shimmer on that rainbow background. Okay, here's another one where I used the leftover white heart from our last die cut, and I used it as a focal point on this card. This is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. And I added a hello die cut from Memory Box, and I cut that from silver glitter cardstock. Super fast card to make, especially since the background, all I did was add the powders and added water and let it dry on its own. So I'm going to finish this video by showing you lots of completed examples using the rest of my inked backgrounds. This is the one where I put a lot of the shimmer powder down with water and I let it dry on its own. To keep it clean, I decided to do a simple design. I added a white Simon Says Stamp burst die cut, and then I added hello in black, and that hello is cut from this Hello Crafty Friend die. So I just die cut it with black and cut off the words Crafty Friend. So I didn't add anything else to this. I could have put gems or some other things, but I felt like the color and shimmer on the background and the interest of that burst die cut was all I needed. Now remember that pink, orange, and yellow background that I created earlier that was very smooth looking? Well, I put that on the back of a Memory Box Floral Bouquet heart frame. So I die cut that from white cardstock, glued it on top, and trimmed it. So you can see that pink and yellow showing through. I added it to a white note card that I stamped with that UR background stamp in a soft gray ink. On top, I added a Thinking of You sentiment from the Ampersand Words stamp set. Very simple design, but there's shimmer to that pink piece that really catches the light nicely. This next example is super simple and it features a new die set from Lawn Fawn. I just die cut it from the center and then added some white and purple die cuts into the opening, along with some purple gems on the background. Very simple design, and I love all the color I was able to get very quickly using the shimmer powders. I have two more examples, and they're a little more cutesy than the others. Now this one features great stamp sets from Lawn Fawn. I have the two here that work great together. One is You're Just My Type and the other is Love Poems. So I stamped and colored and cut out some of the images from this. And then I die cut a circle window into one of my inked backgrounds. And you can see how I glued my little images on the inside of the card so you can see them when the card is opened or closed. So this shows that creating inked backgrounds like this can be used with a variety of styles of cards. I think the key is to keep this design very clean and simple. Okay, my last example also has a cute little image. This one is from the new Simon Says Stamp Pawesome Love stamp set, which has lots of cute little cat and dog images. So I stamped one of the dogs and I colored him in very quickly and added a sentiment from the same stamp set. And I put that right into the center of one of my inky backgrounds. Although I colored the dog with markers, I colored in that heart and the collar using the shimmer powders and water so I would be sure that they were a perfect match for the inked background that we created. Okay, there's some fun way to use those Tonic Nuvo Shimmer Powders. They did not ask me to do this video. I just think it's a great product that will last you a long time. So if you're interested in anything I talked about today, I do have links below so you can take a closer look, and that's in my YouTube description. You can also go to my blog for a lot more information, including the particular colors I use for each card in this video. In the middle are a couple other videos that you might be interested in, and I always am thankful you stopped by, and I hope you have a wonderful week.